Well, hello there and welcome to Mind Your Business. I'm Jennifer Anderson, host of the show and the executive director of the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. Well, we are taping this episode today on Friday, January 15th. That is day 2 of the second declaration of emergency. It's 3 weeks since the provincial shutdown, and it's 8,000 days since the beginning of the global pandemic. It seems like, I think it's about 10 months officially, but with each day comes new details, new announcements, new grants, and new restrictions for businesses. So I'm thrilled to have my guests here today be able to break down some of the information, break down the provincial order and some of the grants and opportunities that are available to small businesses during this time. I'd like to introduce my guests now. Welcome MPP Caroline Mulroney. She is the MPP of our riding, York Simcoe. She's also the Minister of Transportation and the Minister of Francophone Affairs. Thank you, Caroline, for being on the show.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's great to be with you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We also have MPP Pravmeet Sakaria, and he is the MPP of Brampton South, as well as the Associate Minister of Small Business and Red Tape Reduction. Prav, it's nice to have you on the show and joining us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. An absolute pleasure to be here with all of you today.
Well, I appreciate it, especially on a day like today, because there was a big announcement that came forward today with the Ontario Small Business Grant. There's lots of announcements that have been happening this week. And of course, with the emergency order that was declared, there's also a lot of changes for small businesses. So we're talking to both these ministers today a little bit about the information that is currently available for small businesses. I want to let our viewers know that this is a show about business and for business. So all of the questions and all of the topics are relevant and timely, but they relate to businesses. So want to get into a little bit of the information. As I said, over the last few months, especially Georgina, we've been dealing with and been heavily impacted by the restrictions. We've gone from red to gray lockdown to the provincial lockdown to the second emergency order. So all of those changes and restrictions have come fairly quickly. And I'm just looking, maybe Caroline, I can start with you, looking at your comments on these restrictions and how they've affected small businesses in our riding.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. And I want to actually thank my colleague Pravmeet for joining us today, because in his ministry, he's been spearheading a lot of our government's work on providing measures to assist small businesses as we go, so we all navigate this difficult time together. But as you know, from the start of the pandemic, our government's top priority has always been the health and well-being of all Ontarians. And so that's what guides all of our decision making. We recently, late last year in December, we implemented the province-wide shutdown, but it was clear over the last few weeks that given the continued spread of the virus, the increased mobility, the increased capacity pressures that we're experiencing in our hospitals, and the troubling modeling data that was presented, that we needed to take additional steps to protect the health and safety of Ontarians. Now, of course, as you indicated at the top of the show, these measures have had implications on small businesses. And in my constituency office, which is closed physically, but we're still taking calls and assisting constituents, we get questions every day about what we can do to help small businesses. And we have been working since the beginning of the pandemic back in March to provide a suite of solutions for small businesses. But we know it has not been easy. So through my office, we have a website portal people can go to for with my name and COVID supports, where they can access information about all the supports that are available, either through the provincial government or the federal government, because we've been working closely with our federal partners as well to provide the supports that are necessary. And really, until the vaccine is available to all Ontarians, it's important that we remain vigilant to remember that this is a public health emergency above all, but we need to be there to, so we need to take those measures to keep each other safe, but we need to also support our businesses through this difficult time.
Quick question for you, because I know, with the provincial shutdown and the emergency order as well, I don't want to diminish what's happening, but it leveled the playing field for all areas. And you have a riding that is partly in York, partly in Simcoe. And so there was this unbalance. And that has to be difficult as somebody who, is dealing with two different areas in two different stages. So it had to be a challenge for the calls that you were receiving in your constituency office.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you take my constituency office, which is located in Holland Landing and in York region, there is a hair salon right next to my office, which was closed when 4 kilometers away, a hair salon in Bradford located in Simcoe County is open. And so it was very difficult to have to explain how that made sense. But as you know, we've moved forward to a provincial-wide shutdown. And that addresses the fact that people are mobile and we can't stop people from moving around the province. But we ask now with this shutdown that people stay home. But in order to deal with it within York Simcoe, I'm very lucky to have a great team of people who work with me to communicate with constituents. And we work really hard to make sure that we're communicating constantly with business owners to provide them with as much information as possible about what grants and funding are available to them as they go through this difficult time.
Right. Right. Now, as the head of the chamber, we've been receiving a lot of calls as well. We receive a lot of calls from small businesses. And Prav, I know you, as an MPP in Peel, you have been very similar to us in the lockdown areas in terms of those high-risk areas. And so I'm sure at your constituency office, you've been hearing those challenges as well. But as the Minister of Small Business, I'm sure you're hearing from a much larger area and from the province who are struggling with the challenges of the lockdown. What are you hearing most from small businesses?
I've had the opportunity since the onset of the pandemic to host over about 100 virtual roundtables with business owners and trying to find solutions as we navigate this global pandemic. And there's really no sugarcoating it. This is some of the toughest times these businesses will ever see in their lifetime. I'm a son of 2 small business owners. I know, how hard it is to operate a small business, even when the times are good. And so when you put businesses through these very significant, challenging times that are required to keep the economy moving, to keep, the population healthy, it's a tough balance between both the economy and the health, which is a strong priority for all of us here in the province of Ontario. Businesses expect the government to support them during this time. And we've had the opportunity from the onset of the pandemic, whether it was in the first set of lockdown measures or the exciting program that we announced today, which is up to a $20,000 grant for businesses. The government has put forward significant supports to, help businesses pay with rental supports, up to 90% now in the areas, whether it's anywhere in the province, because we're all restricted significantly. We put forward money to help businesses pivot digitally, $57 million. This was, right after the first lockdown ended. And this was really around ensuring that businesses could pivot towards an online presence because we recognize that, we could potentially be in a situation with, potential restrictions for quite some time. So, helping businesses pivot digitally was something that we worked on fairly quickly. Then we also recognize the cost of PPE on businesses and put forward a program of $65 million to support businesses and their needs. But I also, we also recognize from a regulatory standpoint that there was a lot of stuff that the government could have worked on. And we were the first province or first jurisdiction in all of North America to help cap delivery fees for restaurants. When you're ordering off of Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes, or DoorDash, restaurants restaurants were being charged up to 30% in fees. So,
Right.
we were able to cap that up to 15% on delivery fees with no more than 20 inclusive. So, it's about innovating, finding ways to support businesses and really helping them get through this very difficult time.
Well, and I was going to say that because, we've had 10 months of a lot of heavy discussions, a lot of staggering numbers and feelings of challenges and defeat. So it's really nice to have a day like today where you can make an announcement about a new support grant for businesses and feel like, there's light at the end of the tunnel, that there is help and that businesses aren't alone in the struggle. So let's talk a little bit about the Ontario Small Business Support Grant.
It's a great grant. It's recognizing the significant challenges businesses have gone through. One of the things I heard most from business owners was they didn't want to put on more debt. Some of the programs that have been announced originally, required them to take on loans. So this is a minimum grant of $10,000 to any businesses that have seen a 20% decline. Sales, if you're an existing business, your calculation would be based off of April 2019 to April 2020. The other thing that I heard significantly through my roundtable and discussions with businesses was that they wanted an easy, simple application that they could go on to online and apply as quick as possible and get the money into their bank account very quickly as well. I know I've personally gone through that application portal, and I think if you have all of your information handy, it shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes. And it's something that, we really strive to work towards, was the simplicity of the grant, because we recognize that businesses need this money as soon as possible. So at the minimum, if your business has been restricted by the lockdown, you will receive up to a minimum of $10,000 to a maximum of $20,000. And I think one of the best things about this program is it's a grant from the government, and there's no requirement to pay back. And we're offering this because of the severity that this lockdown has put on, and the pressures that this lockdown has put on towards businesses. And we recognize the sacrifices that small business owners are using. So when we take, the money that we're putting forward here today, just today, and you combine it with, the 100% of, your property tax and energy bills that you can also claim, also your 90%, covering your 90% of your rental cost or lease. These are significant supports that the government has put forward to help businesses get through these very difficult times and help with those liquidity pressures that many of those businesses are facing. But ultimately, our goal is to, as Caroline was mentioning earlier, build on the vaccine distribution as soon as we get them. And, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And we really hope that this program can help be that bridge until we get the vaccinations. As we get the vaccinations out, that we can build up those businesses, give them that opportunity for the next month or 2 months, and really instill some hope in this province and get through this together.
Well, and
Jennifer, can I just add to that? Because
absolutely.
There's so many small businesses in York Simcoe, and so that's why this grant is so it can be very helpful to businesses across our riding. But I just, Prob mentioned the simplicity of the grant, and part of that is also the fact that each small business will be able to use the support in whatever way makes the most sense for their individual business. So, for example, some businesses will need support paying employee wages or rent, while others will need support in maintaining their inventory. And it's up to them to decide how best to use those funds. So in addition to that simplicity, there's that flexibility that's available for small business owners as part of this program.
Well, I think you're right. And I'm sure that you are hearing that from businesses while they're calling in and asking questions and discussing the challenges that they're facing. Each of them is a little bit different. So having that opportunity to be able to use a grant like this, whichever way is best for them, is very helpful. Yeah. Also want to just quickly mention, I know, Prav, you mentioned the portal, and the fact that it is easy, I think, is going to be a great opportunity for businesses. But also, as you go into the website, it gives you the information about that grant. And then it's almost like it says, oh yeah, and if you're eligible for this, why don't you look at your eligibility for the energy savings costs? And why don't you look at, whether you're eligible for the PPE relief? And those are the other grants that you had mentioned. And so it's nice to be able to have that information all in one, so businesses aren't stressing and searching and having to look for that information. It's all available right on that page to apply for all at the same time. That was on purpose, wasn't it?
But it was, and that was really trying to focus around, making it simple. I heard many times from business owners that they didn't want to be, owner's paperwork, as my title as red tape minister as well, reducing red tape. Many times when you're applying for government grants or programs, it could take days to do applications. So, when you go on that website, whether it's ontario.ca/COVID supports or ontario.ca/small business, they'll both lead you to the exact same page, which lists all of the Ontario government grants. So that includes, 100% coverage of your electricity and property tax bills, a digital Main Street grants that are available up to $2,500 for businesses, PPE grants of $1,000 for some of the smaller businesses, and this grant and this program of up to $20,000 grant for businesses that need them. We're trying to make it as simple as possible. And I really got to urge businesses to apply to these. Our internal numbers show that not many businesses have applied. So we're trying to get out there and get the word out as much as possible, because, these can truly bring a lot of savings to these businesses and get them the support they need to get them through this very difficult time.
Very good. You mentioned vaccines, so that opened the door to my next question. On January 15th, Rocco Rossi, President and CEO of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, released a statement calling for faster deployment of the COVID-19 vaccine in Canada. He was quoted as saying, "The faster the Ontario population is inoculated, the faster we can work together on the province's path to economic recovery. Today, we call on all levels of government to do all that they can to get vaccines into the hands of Canadians as quickly as possible." Caroline, what are your comments on that?
Well, I absolutely agree with Rocco Rossi's comment on the vaccines. The vaccines are, as Premier Ford would say, the game changer here. It's what we've all been waiting for. And I was lucky to go to South Lake at the opening of their vaccine clinic with Minister Elliott to understand what the process was going to be at South Lake for healthcare workers to receive the vaccine. And it was incredibly exciting. It was, people were teary-eyed and people had goosebumps. It was the moment we had all been waiting for. It provides the real light at the end of the tunnel. So having the vaccine here in York Simcoe being administered and across the province is key for for the province to turn the corner on this very difficult time. We've set up a task force headed by General Hillier to roll out the distribution plan and to ensure that Ontario is prepared to receive the vaccine, because we're working with our federal partners to receive the vaccine, to store it, and to administer it properly over the next several months. It's essential that those who are the most vulnerable in our society receive the vaccine. I was very pleased to see this week that our residents in two of our long-term care homes in York Simcoe in York had received it already, the first stage of the vaccine. So that was a great moment for long-term care residents in York Simcoe. But the government is rolling out a plan prioritizing residents based on how vulnerable they are. So we're doing that in conjunction with our health resources around the province. But it will, of course, have an impact on our economy. So we want to administer it properly and as quickly as we can, based on how quickly we receive it from the federal government.
And certainly as the Minister of Small Business and Red Tape Reduction, I assume you have a comment on this as well as the rollout takes place and as we hear news this week of phase 2 in the vaccine deployment.
Yeah, I think, when it's exciting news, and I have, constantly have business owners reaching out to our team, and, all the ministers are working around the clock to see, oversee probably one of the largest logistical operations in the history of this province or this country. So, at the same time, there's a lot of excitement. There's, everybody sees the hope that is at the end, the light at the end of the tunnel here, because we've all been through this. I remember when, this, the first emergency was put forward. A lot of us didn't know if it was going to be, 1 month, 2 months, 6 months down the road, but here we are, almost a year later, dealing with the pandemic, and I think people want to look for a pathway to get back out to some sense of normalcy, and we really think that through the vaccine, working with all levels of government, the federal level, provincial level, municipal level, is really going to be key to delivering this, and very honored to have General Hillier leading the charge here in Ontario. A decorated veteran, and who can really get the mission done. This is what businesses need. This is how we're going to get our economy back on track. This is how we're going to get businesses up and running again. This is how we're going to improve not only consumer confidence, business confidence in the province of Ontario. So I'm very excited about our rollout phase, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And as we get everybody vaccinated, I'm looking forward to getting these businesses back up and running. And until then, we'll continue to support our businesses, and they can rely on, some of the programs as we announced today on the up to $20,000 grant to help them bridge that gap until we can get them back up and running again to full capacity.
Absolutely. Actually, so many announcements happening this week. There's been a lot of great news, and Caroline, as the Minister of Transportation, I know a couple of announcements came from your office. One was the expansion of truck rest areas, so I'll start with that one. That was in early January, Ontario announced the expansion of truck rest areas across the province, supporting safer and more convenient stops for truck drivers. And, this is the perfect time as and the trucking industry is still out on the roads trying to get goods to and from local businesses. So your comments on this?
Well, before the pandemic, there was a shortage of truck rest areas and truck parking spaces across Ontario. But, during the pandemic, we saw that while so many of us were able to stay home, some had to continue working to keep our economy going, to keep our supply chain strong, make sure that we had food on our table and medicine on our shelves. And so we owe a great debt of gratitude to our truck drivers for continuing to do the essential work that they do. As Minister of Transportation, it was clear to me early on that we could support our truck drivers by improving existing truck rest areas in Ontario, but also by building new ones. So that was our announcement, that we were improving 14 existing truck rest areas and building 14 new ones, adding almost 200 additional truck parking spaces at en route travel plazas. It was very well received by the trucking sector, because it's been something that they've been calling on the government to do for some time. And so I'm happy that construction is already underway for many of these projects. Others will begin later this year, and it's our hope that all projects will be completed in the next 3 or 4 years. So, it's part of our larger plan to ensure that we have well-maintained highway infrastructure. So Ontario spends $2.6 billion to expand and repair our highways and our bridges. And we're going to continue to make those investments in construction funding as well as rehab to make sure that our roads are in good condition and that they're safe for our carriers and our drivers.
Very good. And equally as exciting, the announcement yesterday of Ontario providing money to York Simcoe as part of the Ontario gas tax program.
That's right. So we announced about $375 million of funding as part of our gas tax program to support transit systems across the province. And so it'll support over 100 municipalities across Ontario. And in Bradford, we were able to provide support for Bradford's transit system. This transit has been essential during the pandemic, making sure that our frontline healthcare workers could get to and from work. And the vaccine, as Prob mentioned in his previous answer, the vaccine will give people confidence to come back to public transit. And we need that because transit is so essential to our economy, to getting our workers back and forth to work and home. And so we are glad that we are able to continue supporting public transit in this way. Ontario has done so in a big way this year with the Safe Restart Agreement that we have with the federal government. Not only did we get the federal government to commit $1 billion funding for operational deficits for public transit of the public transit systems in Ontario, but our government also put up $1 billion so that we could help them manage these very difficult fiscal situation that they find themselves in. And so the gas tax program is yet another layer of much needed financing and support that they need.
Right. We only have a couple minutes left. I want to ask, how are you both doing? Because I know in any given day, the stress of the job, the stress of, home life and as a hockey mom, a fellow hockey mom, Caroline, not being in the arena. I mean, all of those take its toll on everyone, but both of you are very involved in announcements and making changes. How are you doing to get through this time, Caroline?
Well, thank you for the question. It's been a challenging time for myself and my family, just as it is for so many. We are, making adjustments as we can. We know that we are fortunate that we can continuing to do our job from home, and my husband and I do not take that for granted, and so we try to remember that. Of course, the toll it can take to be working and living in the same space day after day, it can, that can pose a challenge. And so we remember to try to get outside and do our exercise and reach out to our friends. I have to say, FaceTime has been such a help during, especially over the holidays. We did a lot of family FaceTimes with family and friends that we would normally get to celebrate with, but couldn't this time. But I think with young kids, explaining to them that these limitations that are meant to protect ourselves, but also our fellow Ontarians are necessary, but explain, I have to acknowledge that it has a personal toll on their life, not being able to play hockey, right. Something that they love, but it's important. And, we're fortunate that we can continue to work and be together, but, and I'm sure feel the same thing. We're blessed and honored to be in these roles, getting to help support our communities during this. That
is the perfect way to end this segment. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate all of the conversation around small business and the opportunities that exist. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you to everybody who has been watching. And we'll see you next time on Mind Your Business.